I hope you can see the slide right now.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm a master's student at Çanakkale 18 Mart University at the moment, and I will be presenting the study that I and Professor Dr. Ecezir Topkaya conducted. Well, first of all, let's see the contents. Well, first, I'll begin with the background to this study, and then I'll move on to explain methodology, findings, discussion parts of our study, and then we'll finish with conclusion, implication, and references. Well, first of all, background to this study. Well, we need to first identify what is power. So explaining power is a difficult task because power is a complex construct. But here are some 4 descriptions on power that are most prominent in the relevant literature. First of all, power can be a person's successful attempt to get someone do something. So it's about exerting overt influence, as you can see. It's about the interaction between different groups of people, between the oppressor and the oppressed, between the powerful and the powerless. And also, we should focus on the term dominance here, because dominance can tell us who rules and who is silenced in a specific context. And its power can also be about shaping decisions through manipulation. Well, why should we study power in our own context, in the ELT context then? Well, dominance is the most insidious form of power. So therefore, abusive use of power may lead to absenteeism. Well, absenteeism is the suppression of alternatives. For example, you're a teacher in a classroom, and if you don't let your students pick what to learn, what kind of activities and materials to be used in the classroom, and you always decide on these, then you're using that power, and then you're abusing the power in the classroom. So your students are left without a voice. So, and as I said earlier, power is a complex and pervasive construct, and it is disguised in relationships. So identifying power in the relationships might, and interactions between students and teachers and the instructors in the tertiary level might give us some clues on how to improve teacher education. And research questions, these are our research questions. We have 2 research questions. First one is, what are the most particular power bases that are evident in tertiary level ELT contexts? And 2, how do power bases affect the interaction between the students and the instructors? Well, first of all, I got a notification, but okay. Well, I'll first describe the power bases here because we use power bases to analyze the current relevant literature. And power bases are categorized under 2 main headings, which are first the pro-social power bases and anti-social. So as you can see, the first 3 power bases here, reward, referent, and expert powers, are pro-social, and the last 2 are anti-social power bases. Well, reward power basically is the ability to reward and give. So motivational speeches and showing respect to your students are considered as reward power. So you're using reward power in these cases. Referent power, on the other hand, is all about attractiveness and worthiness. So if your student comes up to you and says, well, I want to be like you, the teacher, and I shall behave like my teacher. So it means that you have referent power, and because you're considered as worthy by your students. And expert power, on the other hand, is about having superior knowledge or ability in extremely specific areas. So a professor can be considered as having an expert power because a professor has lots of works and experiences in that specific field. Coercive power, on the other hand, is about punishment for non-conformity. So forcing a disruptive student to leave your classroom can be considered as coercive power because non-conformity here is the disruption that student makes, and you punish that student for it. Legitimate power, on the other hand, is the power that is given to you, the teacher. So when we think about the hierarchy, the people up high in the hierarchy will give you this legitimate power. So when you have legitimate power, for example, you can use this power to create rules for your own classroom. So then you can use coercive power to punish those students who are disruptive. So they cause non-conformity in your classroom. So legitimate power can be used for good intentions and bad intentions. So how do power bases are researched in the relevant literature? Well, first, quantitative means are most of the time I saw that the studies use teacher power use scale by Schroeder and others, 2007. It combines all the power bases and it reveals the interaction between teachers and students. So it's a very useful scale in this matter. And qualitative means semi-structured interviews are highly adapted and diary studies are conducted as well. So for methodology, well, we use integrative review research because integrative review research enables us to generate new knowledge about the topic by critiquing, synthesizing, and reviewing the relevant literature on power bases. And integrative reviews identify the gaps in the literature and the need for future research. So that's why it's important for us to adapt integrative review research. So these are our materials. So I'm not going to explain any details on this. So we have 13 articles here. So that's it. So for data analysis, we benefit from inductive content analysis. We first made sense of the data by reading on and on again every 13 article. And then we started open coding process. Then we grouped and categorized our codes. And then we created themes and general explanations for the themes. And then this last process is the reporting, the analysis, of course. So also for reliability issues, we had an extensive discussion on finalizing the themes and codes. For findings, excuse me, I will do like this. So you can see the slideshow, right now. Okay. Well, for findings, I categorize the findings into two tables. First one is the pro-social power basis. Well, for pro-social power basis, first of all, we can talk about the reward power. And I'm just going to touch upon the most important themes occurred in our analysis. So here, extrinsic motivation for reward power can be considered as important because when students were extrinsically motivated by their teacher, I mean, when the teacher used his reward power, then the students felt proud and the teacher affirmed and complimented to students' answers. For referent power, a power sharing theme is important here because the teacher who uses referent power makes the students be active in the classroom. I mean, students become active in the classroom when they see that, well, their teachers are worthy and attractive, but not in a physical way, actually. So referent power is always associated with expert power in that sense. And also, students feel good about themselves through shared control, trust, and intimacy. Referent power paves way for shared control, trust, and intimacy. For expert power, on the other hand, teacher as omniscient theme is important here. So when students see their teachers as all-knowing factors, they believe that, well, step-by-step, clear and explicit instructions occur in the classroom when teacher has the expert power. So for anti-social power basis, for coercive power, instructor's absolute authority theme is important here. So students, when coercive power is extended in the classroom and used extensively in the classroom by the instructor, students say that, I mean, indicate that they fear to ask questions. So there's fear of failing if you ask questions and if you do something bad. So students always think about these. Well, there's also in a classroom where coercive power is extensively used, there is teacher talk domination in the classroom. For legitimate power, extensive teacher power and acceptance of authority themes are important. Well, extensive teacher power is when instructors use legitimate power extensively, then students realize that they have no control over what subjects to be learned and studied in the classroom, and what methods to use. As I said earlier at the beginning, like activities, materials, etc. Then also turn taking is totally managed by the teacher in a classroom where legitimate power is extensively adapted and used by the teacher. And also there's this acceptance of authority theme, which is quite interesting finding. And I can say that in one of the studies, students believe that the teachers, the instructors should use legitimate power. They should be strict, but at the same time, they should be fair. So I'll explain this in the discussion section, why they believe so. So for discussion part, so first question is, we should ask in the discussion is, what is the crucial reason that students embrace their instructors and extensive legitimate power? So this may be because of the cultural background of the students. So students may consider older people and people who are in authoritative roles should be considered as people who should be respected at the same time. So students might believe in this, how can I say, fact or opinion. And also Hofstede studies Hofstede studies actually prove this. So can coercive, and secondly, can coercive and legitimate powers be used for good intentions? Well, in this matter, awareness is important. So people who have the knowledge also have the power. But at some points in our lives, I mean, as teachers, we may not realize that we have some kind of power to affect students in a negative or in a positive way. So this is why it's important to have a realization towards what kinds of legitimate and coercive powers we have and how can we use them for good intentions in the classroom. So thirdly, is reward power always beneficial? Should every teacher use it? Well, in this matter, this is also an interesting discussion here, because legitimate power can dominate reward power, because students can associate the rewards with their compliance to their instructors. So they may not see them as actual rewards. They may see them as rewards for their compliance, for their allegiance to their teacher. So the reward may become something part of the legitimate power. So for conclusion and implication part, well, I can clearly say that pro-social power bases like reference, reward, and expert influence language education in a positive way, but anti-social power bases like legitimate, coercive have negative impact on the process. And here, self-reflection is the key. I mean, as I said earlier, we may not realize what kind of power bases and powers we have. So therefore, we always need to self-reflect on our own practices and what we do in the classroom during the day. So self-reflection becomes a key important element in the power relations studies. And we can self-reflect to promote democratic learning environment and questioning in the students. And also, lastly, further qualitative studies are needed to explore how legitimate and coercive powers can be used for good intentions that would enhance English language teaching contexts. And this is also an important factor because in all of the studies, nearly all of the studies, legitimate and coercive powers are used as ways to dominate the students. But legitimate power is not something that is yours. It is given to you. And legitimate power can turn into coercive power when you use it for bad intentions, for punishing, for example. So that's why we need further analysis of these two power bases specifically. So these are our references. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for your presentation and inspiring study.
Thank you.
Any questions we have or comments?
Thank you, Semin Hocam.
Okay. If you don't have any questions, we may go on with our next presentation.